It's Sunday, July 19th, 2015, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today we are joined by one of our mentors, Paul Hurwitz, Director of Active Analytics at Active Health Management, to lead a talk on parachuting into existing product. Just allow me to briefly explain the format to those of you joining us perhaps for the first time today. Along the bottom of your screen you're seeing mentors and mentees within the Product Mentor program. It's a program that helps a lot of product managers from junior to senior positions take their career up to the next level with a one-on-one mentorship for a period of 6 months. We're currently in session 3 right now. Hey everyone on the bottom, wave hi. There we go. I feel like the puppet master now. So what I'm going to we'll quickly do is we'll just quickly go around with some introductions, and then we'll just jump right into it. Let's start today with Andrew. You tell us a little bit about yourself and whether or not you're a mentee or a mentor.
Hey, my name's Andrew Fields. I work at Verizon on the wireline side for their mobile apps. I'm currently a mentee and really enjoying these different sessions and learning a lot.
Awesome. Anthony.
Hey, I'm Anthony Nguyen. I'm a product manager at Vitals, a healthcare transparency tech company, and I'm one of the mentees as well. Paul's mentee, actually, so I'm really excited about the presentation. Thanks.
Awesome. And Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Hurwitz, and I am Director of Active Analytics at Active Health Management, which is a wellness and population health company working with individual members to find better ways to keep them healthy.
Outstanding. And so I am Jeremy Horn, also known as the product guy, and I'll be moderating today. And so as you have questions, send the questions in. So go to theproductmentor.com/live, and you can submit your questions there. As the questions come in, I'll curate a little bit, and then I'll pass them along to Paul in somewhat real time. And then Paul will have an opportunity to answer your questions. So again, it's theproductmentor.com/live, and also as you kind of go through this, and if you would like to be a mentor just like Paul, just go to theproductmentor.com and sign up, and I'll be in touch shortly. But with all that said, let's learn about parachuting into existing product, and I'll hand it over to Paul.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. My talk today is going to be about parachuting into an existing product, or how to land on your feet as a product manager. Let me go ahead and... Are we looking? Yeah, here we go. Sorry about that. So, let me talk a little bit about myself here. I've been in different technology roles for more than 15 years. I've been in product roles for more than 10 years. The products that I have led and managed are finance and accounting software, where I spent most of my time in product management. I was at that company for 12 years. Life sciences, working on software for the pharmaceutical industry. And also health tech products, where I currently am working on software for population health and well-being. And I have parachuted 3 times into existing products. The first one was Centage Corporation, where I was the 3rd employee, but the product already existed. I took over tech support and eventually introduced product management into the company and stayed there for 12 years. In a couple of slides, I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about that. Medidata, I parachuted in there and took over product management for one of the company's 11 product families. It was software for the pharmaceutical industry, for designing and optimizing clinical trials for new drugs and new medical devices. And the company that I'm currently at, Active Health Management, it's a product that the product I'm developing actually doesn't exist yet, but the company has numerous products and programs that do. As Director of Product for Reporting, I'm instituting product management for reports, which actually do exist, so that's the part that I'm parachuting into, and building a new platform for delivery of reports, which doesn't exist at this time, and that's what I'm actively working on delivering. So what I'm going to be talking about is steps that you can take in your first 2 weeks of being at a new company, when you're parachuting into a company, and then after I go through the first 5 steps of the first 2 weeks, I'm going to go into additional steps that can help you in the first, say, 30 to 60 days of being at the company in order to land on your feet and really give you a chance to really learn the company well and learn the products well and be able to speak on behalf of your product. It's important to always remember that first impressions are extremely important. It's very difficult to recover from a bad first impression. Whether or not you make a good first impression, some people are not going to like you or like having a product manager at the company. This is especially true if you're being hired to be the first product manager in a growing company. In all cases, it's important to understand how others perceive product managers. In a company with an existing product management infrastructure, it's much easier. People understand what product management is there for and what they do and that sort of thing. And they're used to working with product managers. Hopefully you have a good infrastructure and people have had good relationships with product managers. In growing startups, it can actually be much harder, especially in companies where the founders or founder still has a strong influence in the company. In that kind of a situation, product managers are often hired to have more of an execution-focused role, executing on the founder's ideas. It could take a lot of effort to convince the founder to give up the product reins enough to allow true product management lifecycle to take root and become truly customer and stakeholder focused. And I'm really, again, I mentioned in my last slide talking about Centage. I'm going to get into that, and in my next slide, I'm going to get following on the same lines. In either case, the ideas I'm going to share today will help you parachute into an existing product into an existing company with an existing product and get a good understanding of the company, its products, and its founders. This is my favorite Dilbert of all time. But let's take a step back here. What's the title of the slide? Meet with key stakeholders. Starting with the influential stakeholders, both internal and external, will give you a window into the short-term urgency for your position or new product assignment. This Dilbert is my favorite one, and I used to have it taped up in my cubicle at Centage Corporation back in Boston. When the founder of my old company would come up to my cubicle with something to do or an idea for the product, I would point to the cartoon, because inevitably this is what was going through his mind, and then we'd have a real discussion about what was really important. The thing to remember is that every stakeholder you speak to thinks that their ideas or features are the top priority, but your goal is to find out what the real priorities are. I'm going to digress here for a moment, as I said before, to talk about my time at Centage because I think it's relevant to this point in my presentation. When I started at Centage, we were very much in startup mode. I was the third employee, and everything we did came from the founder. The product already existed, so I wasn't helping create the product from scratch. I started doing tech support. Then I created a training and consulting team for the company. And after being at the company for about 4 years, I moved over to the dev team, doing a bunch of things, writing requirements, top-level tech support, doing product demos, QA, release engineering, DevOps, basically everything but writing code. Oops, sorry about that. And what happened was, my role basically turned into being a technical product manager, doing everything with the dev team, but not really working with other people. The company hit a slump. We weren't growing. We were still very much in founders mode. I realized we needed to make a change and start listening to our customers more. Anecdotally, I knew the features we needed to help us grow. These top features being requested in reality were exactly the features the founder said, oh, we don't really need those. Customers don't want them. They're not going to use those features, etc. I took that as a challenge to really learn product management and to show the owner of the company why we needed them. I spent several months conducting surveys and talking with our most active customers. The data I collected showed us the top 10 features we needed to add to our product in order to stay competitive. And faced with the facts that I had, I went to the founder of the company and I showed him the data and convinced him he was wrong. with facts, he couldn't tell me I was wrong. It wasn't just my opinion, it was fact-based. And it wasn't just my opinion anymore. I made the case that we needed a product manager, and he agreed, and I became the product manager. This Dilbert became unnecessary after I became product manager because we really truly started listening to internal and external customers and all of our stakeholders, and that is key to good product management. Listening to stakeholders and customers is everything in product management. So, who are the stakeholders that you need to talk to during your first 2 weeks in the company? Again, this list isn't exhaustive, and it's important to keep in mind that there will be some surprise stakeholders. The ones that I've listed here are the obvious ones. The CEO, you may or may not be able to talk with the CEO depending upon the size of the company. Marketing director, and it may be product marketing for your product versus marketing for the company. Other product managers in the company, sales director or salespeople directly on the sales team for your product, account management. And then on the technical side, you've got other stakeholders, the VP of engineering or the development lead for your product, QA lead, customer support lead. But remember, there are going to be some surprise ones. People you didn't know were important stakeholders or even existed, but they can be important. People like the co-founders of the company that might not be in your direct chain. So you may not interact with them on a normal basis, but they can have some really good information that can really help you. Other surprise stakeholders might be that individual contributor developer who's still with the company 10 years later. They may not have a high profile in the company, and they may not be a really outgoing kind of person. They may be that really geeky kind of developer, but they've got a lot of good insights into what the company's been doing right and what the company's been doing wrong. You need to quickly figure out who these people are and include them in your first stakeholder conversations. There's no real magical number to how many people you should be talking to, but you just need to identify all the critical stakeholders as quickly as you can and speak to as many of them as possible.
So, Paul, we just had a question come in from Anthony, and so I'm going to throw it over to Anthony to ask his question.
Yeah, Paul. I think that's really great advice. And I'm wondering to follow up on your point that you just had left off on. Other than title, which I've found isn't always the best proxy for influence, and as you mentioned, some of the key stakeholders are that senior developer who might not have like the director or VP or key title attached to it. What's a good way of identifying these key stakeholders, both internally and externally?
Well, probably the first person you need to start with is whoever hired you. Whoever hired you had something to fill, and they probably have been acting as product manager for the product before they hired you. And you're either replacing somebody else, or if it's a growing company, they might be the founder and are looking to add to the company. So whoever hired you is the best person to start with to get a list of the critical stakeholders. And then it's a matter of really doing a lot of listening when you're meeting with the first couple of stakeholders that they tell you to meet with. And that's going to be the VP of engineering, it's going to be them, it's going to be salesperson, marketing, and a developer. You'll learn from the other people who some of the more important people are to meet with, and not just the people that the person who hired you directly told you that you should talk to.
Great, great. So for those of you, so that's all the questions we have at the moment, but for those of you who are joining us from the outside world, definitely keep the questions coming in. You just post your questions to theproductmentor.com/live, and I'll pass them along to Paul. And with that said, Paul, back to you. Okay,
thank you. So in your discussions with stakeholders, which we've been talking about who to meet with, what should you be talking with them about? What should you be talking with them about? You want to, first of all, and Anthony has heard me say this a couple of times, and I will say this to anybody who will listen to me, is about product management, is what is the problem that we are trying to solve? They might be able to tell you what is the product that we're selling. They might be able to sell you on the features, but you need to make sure you truly understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But in most B2B companies, if you can't solve a company's problem, or one of their many problems that they have, they're not going to spend money to buy your software. Consumer might deal a little bit more with buying something that's a want as opposed to a need, but companies for the most part won't. So my tips for these initial discussions with stakeholders would be do it face-to-face if possible. Sometimes you can't. My company is very dispersed geographically. I couldn't do that. But if you can do it, when you're talking to the stakeholders, listen. Don't talk too much. Just listen to them talking and take notes. A lot of notes. And I'm going to come back to a little bit later why those notes are so important. So some of the key questions that you want to be asking in these initial discussions with stakeholders are what's working? What's not working? Why do you think that's not working? A lot of the people will probably have a real good opinion on why something's not working. A lot of what you're going to hear, though, is going to be opinion, but it helps you to start establishing your own opinion and coming up with what's really fact. Other questions you want to be asking are what could be done better? Especially when you talk to the development team, they are usually not involved in a lot of discussions about what should the product be doing, what kinds of things could be done better, or that sort of thing, but really involve them because they may not have an idea from a business point of view what the customers really need, but they're in deep in the product and they might have some real good insights as to how to make the product better. And they'll especially be able to tell you a lot about technical debt that might exist in the backlog that really needs to get worked on. Also, you want to be asking who are the stars in the company? Who are the, again, like I was saying to Anthony before, ask the people that you're talking to, who are the people I should be talking to? They'll be able to point you in the right direction. In addition to finding out the dynamics in the company and who plays nicely together in the sandbox, what's also important to find out in these chats with stakeholders is, again, as I stated right at the beginning of this slide, what's the problem you're trying to solve? If you're not solving a problem, then you aren't doing a good job as a product manager. You're going to learn during these discussions a lot about the company and your product during these conversations. It'll be like drinking from a fire hose at the beginning, and you'll be digesting a lot. That's why it's important to take notes. I've often found myself having these conversations, taking notes, having more conversations, and then getting into the company a month or two or whatever the case might be, then going back to these stakeholders that I spoke to during my first week in the company and talking with them again once I have a better understanding of the company, of the market, of my product, and you can often get a lot more useful information now that you can ask better questions. Also, by having these meaningful discussions with the stakeholders, they will understand that you're interested in learning as much as you can as quickly as possible. Hopefully, they'll respect that you are trying to understand the situation on the ground and will move forward working on as broad an understanding of opinion and fact as possible. It will also let people know that you aren't trying to come in and take things over based on your own ideas only. Rather, that you're trying to understand everyone's concerns and ideas and establish facts before you act on them. Just to further elaborate, people have very different ideas of what product managers are, so you need to make sure that you act as professional as you can and have your own ideas of what established product management best practices are that you want to follow, and follow them. Just don't do things by the seat of your pants. The more you do by the seat of your pants, the more likely they're going to say, I don't need to pay attention to this guy coming in.
Great. So, Paul, we just had another question come in, and this time it's from Andrew. Andrew?
Hey, Paul. I was wondering, so there seems to be like a difference between what's good for the product and somewhat what's good for your own career. And, you know, there's always, I feel like, a balance of, you know, things that you should fight for and things you should let go. So is there a best way to push against kind of the status quo? Either from right when you're, you know, parachuting into a product, or if you've been part of the product for, you know, a decent amount of time. I feel like it's sometimes a hard balance, for me at least, to determine, you know, what should I push for, well, what should I let go, and how to, you know, balance that with your career goals, you know, and moving through the company. Because a lot of times people who kind of our yes men tend to go move up, while those who fight against, what is status quo, either are ignored or, thought of as, the next promotion. They're like, well, this person argued with me, so I don't like him or something. So I'm just wondering, what do you think the best balance of that, or how you would handle that would be?
The first thing that I would say, and this is something that my current boss says to me a lot, and I really appreciate when she says this: do the right things for the right reasons in the right way. If you're always following that, then even if you're arguing with some people, if they can't say that you're doing the wrong thing, and if they can't say that you're doing it in the wrong way, and if they can't say that you're doing it for the wrong reason, and everything that they see is you doing everything for the right reasons, that will resonate. And I've found that in my current company. It's so true. Once my new boss said this to me in my first couple of days, I found it to be so true that if everybody around you sees you doing things for the right reasons, then it won't really be seen as arguing. It'll really be seen as just trying to move things forward. As I was preparing for my presentation, I watched a presentation from the last session by Jordan Bergtram, who's one of the group mentors this session, and he had a really good point that really stuck with me. That when you're meeting with the executives of the company, the really higher ups, or even your own boss, somebody who's anybody that's higher than you, their opinion is going to win over your opinion. But if you can show them fact versus their opinion, you have a much better chance of succeeding. So really stick with facts and only argue facts. Don't argue your opinion. And that'll really help you move forward. In terms of balancing growing in the company and growing in your own career, I see them often as very much part and parcel of the same thing. If you're growing in your own company, then you are going to grow in your own career. It may not look like it, but if you keep growing in your own company, that's going to advance your own career. Now, if you have different career goals, where you want to maybe get into HR of hiring product managers, or if you want to get into business development or sales or any of those things that are not strictly product management, that's obviously a little bit different. And that's a matter of a lot of domain expertise. If you really understand the market and the domain that your company is in, that can help you grow in whichever kind of position you want to. In terms of your own product, though, it's really just a matter of getting as many facts as you can.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with silos, in the sense of what one group thinks is important just for their numbers might be not overall good for the company, but good for that specific silo. So I think that thought of getting the facts straight and saying, like, look, this actually benefits the company overall more, so let's go this direction, and then the opinions, as you're saying, can help fall away if you have the right facts.
Talking about silos, the company that I'm in currently is very, very siloed. So that's been a challenge for me, breaking through some of the silos. And I'm working on reporting. Often reporting is looked at as the ugly forgotten stepchild. Oh, we're a month from launching this product. We need to have some reports. Or we're 3 days from launching this new feature. We need to have a report on this. But nobody ever thought to talk about the reporting product manager to get that done. So one of the things that I've done to try and break down some of those silos, and I've actually seen this rub off on other parts of the company and some of the other silos, is, and I've spoken with Anthony about this, is I have a weekly meeting where I invite all of the senior product people to this meeting, and it's sometimes we end up canceling, most of the time we don't, but it's just a matter of, okay, let's talk about new features that are coming out. Let's talk about new products that you're thinking about launching next year. What are the customers that are coming online that maybe have different reporting needs from another kind of customer? And really, I'm starting a conversation with them because I want to learn what they're doing in order to make reporting better, but it's making them talk to each other. So one group might really need to interact with Group B, but they've never done that. But now that they're actually talking about it in a group, they're starting to talk about it. And some of the other product leads and some of the other silos are starting to have some of these meetings also, in order, even sometimes just within their own silos, some of the product managers don't talk about the different things. So a lot of these conversations have started happening, and it's pushing out. I think there was a lack of some product management best practices, and I think it's starting to rub off a little bit that some of the other teams are starting to pick up the slack of what they've been missing on.
Great.
Cool, thanks.
So we don't have any other questions at the moment, but everyone else, please keep them coming in. theproductmentor.com/live. Submit your questions there. That said, Paul, back to you.
Okie dokie. Let's move on to the next slide. Step number 2 in your first week or two at a new company is to find or create the backlog. Every meeting that you have with the stakeholders that we just spoke about, will reveal things that have been promised or already committed to, or ideas that people have, or maybe there is somebody who has a backlog somewhere, maybe not. Another thing that you need to try and figure out from all these conversations: are there any golf course deals? Did the CEO promise something to a client or a prospect on the golf course, or at a dinner or something like that? You need to find those out. Every meeting will include a few small, quote, small requests for things that have already been committed. Write them down, put them into a backlog, but don't make any commitments yet until you know the full scope of the problem. Response just like, thanks, that sounds like a reasonable new feature. Let me get back to you after I look into it. Most likely, execs and sales teams and customers anticipate a decade's worth of quasi-promises in the coming quarter. So you need to, one of the things that I find that you absolutely have to do is manage expectations. The number one symptom of absentee product management is a haphazard backlog with dozens or hundreds of urgent items in there. And really, you got to learn to set expectations and say to somebody, you know what, that's not really realistic. Let's talk about it. Or just, you know what, you've actually, maybe you're further in and you've promised something, but you realize that there's a risk. Let people know the risk as early as possible so that they can start to think about, oh, maybe this won't actually happen. Coming back to the backlog, it's not the product manager's job to prioritize everything in the backlog, just to facilitate the prioritization. The stakeholders will be the ones pushing the prioritization. Sometimes a big promise is made to a customer and it's worth a lot of money, and that might have to lead the prioritization, meaning like who yells the loudest. But nobody should be prioritizing a backlog in a vacuum. Backlog grooming is often what that's for. I facilitate bi-weekly or every third week looking into the backlog and reprioritizing everything that's there. Say, okay, everybody, we've got all the product leads, sales, account management, product marketing, whatever the case might be. Let's make sure these are prioritized in the right way. If you're prioritizing things on your own, then that just means you're working on your own opinion. You might have fact that's backing up your opinion, but it's your opinion that's making something more important. I often find in my current job especially, there's so many product requests, say in my current position for reporting, that I have to make the account managers duke it out and say, okay, whose report's more important? And let them come back and tell me what the prioritization should be. Step number 3, book calls with customers. In that first or second week, get the calls, just book the calls. Doesn't mean you have to have them happen within the first week or two. Even if you don't get to talk with them immediately, you want to be booking these calls. Pull a list of representative users, not just the top 3 customers, and ask for 20-minute phone conversations. If you can get more, great, but 20 minutes should suffice to get some input from them. Tell them I'm the new product manager for whatever the product's name is, and I want to get your input. This will help me serve you, the customer, better. And I'm a fan of saying I'm not in sales. I don't want to try and sell you something. I just want to learn from you. It may take a couple of weeks for these calls to actually happen, but get some requests out. Block the time on your calendar for them. Saying you're in sales, saying you are not in sales, I think is very important. If a customer doesn't feel they're going to be pressured to buy something, they're more likely to A, be willing to speak with you and give you the time, and B, be a little bit more honest in their opinions. Number 4, learn your product. It's very simple. You need to learn it, but it may not necessarily be the most important thing to start with, but it is on that list of the first 5 things. If it's an online service, create an account and carefully look at all the things that you do to sign up. Are there any workflow issues, any sign-up issues? If it's an accounting application like I was managing, load in some recent financial transactions, see what a typical user would be doing, and see if you come across any problems. If it's a developer-oriented API or something like that, scan the code samples. Whatever the product is, run it through its paces and see what you can find. Read the manual even. So many times we tell users RTFM, well, do it yourself. Write down a dozen things, more or less, whatever the case might be, that you think you want to fix or change. You only have a few days to experience your product as a naive new user, so use it wisely to really try and put your software through its paces before you've learned anything about it, from other people or whatever. Just really virgin looking at the product and seeing what you can get out of it. Number 5. And sometimes this can be the most difficult part, introduce yourself to your development team and do it gently. Gaining the trust and respect of your dev team is one of the most important things that you can do. It'll build the group dynamic on trust and respect, particularly during the inevitable concessions that are going to happen in your discussions about what can be realistically be delivered of everything that's been promised. The 4 steps before this help you start your dialogue with the development team with a solid understanding of the product stakeholders, of the pain points and their solutions, and the product itself. So how do you get in with the developers? How do you talk with them? Join some stand-ups. Attend daily scrum or whatever the case might be. Get in there with some meetings. First, maybe just listen, but then start talking with people afterwards. Grab lunch with random developers or designers if you can. I attended a workshop that was hosted by Rich Mironov, who's a product management consultant, and one of the things that he said when trying to work with developers, or really anybody, but especially developers, he said, is be a mensch instead of an MBA. Be nice to them. They've probably been yelled at by a lot of people who have overpromised, and then the developers underdeliver, and so they've gotten yelled at because people are just looking at them from a finance perspective. Be a nice guy about it, and they'll start to trust you and respect you. Lightly sell the value of product management to them, since they probably have not had good previous experiences. Especially if you're coming in as the first product manager in a company and it was the founder beforehand, they're probably used to a tyrant yelling, ordering them to do things. If you're in an existing company, you don't know what the quality of product management has been, but really just try and sell them on the value of it. If the development team thinks you're coming in to perpetuate what's already been going on, which is overpromise and underdeliver, you won't gain their trust. If they think you're coming in to be their conduit to the rest of the company and instill some sanity to their workflow, they'll respect you and be happy with you. Don't push them to deliver more than they can. You need to understand what their velocity is and how much they can realistically deliver for each release. And most importantly, position yourself as their champion.
We just got a question in from Anthony, and I'm going to hand over to Anthony to ask his question. Before I do that, I just want to mention, as we've got some generic questions coming in, I'm going to hold the generic questions till the end of the talk for you to be able to speak to those, Paul. But right now, I'll hand off to Anthony.
Yes, Anthony.
Okay, yeah. So, it seems like the first several weeks are really critical for prioritizing work, decisions, meetings, all the things that you've highlighted. What are some of the things that that will definitely come up on your radar in those first several weeks that should actually be deprioritized?
Interesting. Probably just so many meetings that have already been scheduled. If you had a predecessor or somebody else that was running the role before you, I would say cancel all those meetings. Tell people they're not necessary, and then once you've discussed with people, you've had all these discussions with stakeholders and met people, then you can really get a good feeling for what the meetings are that are necessary. What can you deprioritize? Doing so much work that product marketing should be doing. I've found myself in some roles doing a lot of marketing stuff instead of sometimes working on the product itself. I would say if there is somebody in marketing, push it off to them. Make them more autonomous, make them more accountable for what they should be doing. I would say the stuff that's peripheral to the product. Sales, while being extremely important, is peripheral to the product. If you can get a sales guy to take over doing the demos in your first couple of weeks instead of you or somebody else in the company who knows the product really well, let them continue doing what they've been doing on these demos until you really feel that you've learned the product. Things like that. Really the stuff that, again, would be peripheral to the product and not directly related to moving the product forward, like the backlog, the product itself, the development team, etc.
Okay, so to restate that, it sounds like it's better to not try to jump into the shoes of, what your expectations of your actual day-to-day roles are, to take the time to, really focus on doing the groundwork stuff, the stuff that might not actually be a part of your day-to-day job once you get into it, but the stuff that you need to build relationships and kind of understand the product and all that, right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Great. So again, I'm gonna general questions. I'm happy to kind of send them over to Paul towards the end of the talk. Feel free to keep sending those in as well. But for anyone also just wanting to get a question to Paul about parachuting in the product right now, definitely post up your questions to theproductmentor.com/live, and I'll get them to him, whether they're general or specific to the topic at hand. That said, back to you, Paul.
Thank you. All right, so we've covered the first week or two in the first 5 steps that you should be doing during that time. So let's move on to the next 30 to 60 days and another 5 steps that you should really concentrate on during that time. We already booked some calls with customers. Have those calls with customers, at least 5 to 10 of them. Take notes. Make sure that when you're taking notes that you're letting people know what these discussions were about. Write a short summary about each one and put it on the team wiki. Send it to the key stakeholders for your product, the development team, the salespeople, marketing, account management, and you'll start to learn to develop your own sense of what's typical. This has a number of different benefits. You'll be working from primary information rather than secondhand sources. And folks will notice that you're working from primary information. Start saying, here's what I heard from customers, instead of here's what I think. Phone calls or meetings with individual customers works in a B2B environment, but may not work as well in a B2C company with thousands or millions of users. In either environment, user surveys can be very useful. With tools like SurveyMonkey and others, you can create surveys that will give you very useful information about what problems users are having with the product and why. Are they happy with their purchase? Is your product solving the problems they bought it for? Useful additional features, UX problems in the product. So those are all things that you can talk about on the phone or put into a survey. Create a product strategy. One might exist, one might not exist. No strategy means no focus. So you got to create one if one doesn't exist. Are we targeting enterprise or small biz or individuals? Are we B2B or B2C? What's our focus? Do we want to increase usage or increase sign-up? What's the pricing going to be? Are we going to expand internationally or only invest domestically? If you just answer yes to multiple choice questions, you're going to be unable to make hard trade-offs. If you really get a good answer to all of these questions, then you'll really be able to start creating your strategy. And again, I'm going to harp on it again. Make sure you understand what the problem is you're trying to solve. That's also going to help you create your product strategy. Number 3, get intimate with your company and especially your product's financials. Most products are intended to make money, and that's how executives keep score. Review your pricing, your sales trends, your concentration of large deals, if there's a cycle to your business. If a budget exists for your product, digest it and know everything in it. Figure out if you deserve a much larger dev team for your product, or maybe you don't deserve such a large dev team and maybe you'll expect poaching to occur. Know if your product's a star, a dog, or a zombie, or if you want to look at it a different way, a cash cow, a star, a question mark, or a dog. Whichever way you want to think about it, following the money is critical and it's often overlooked. Prepare the business for a roadmap reset. Remember, like I said before, expectations are everything. Set them correctly. I almost always discover that dates and commitments are far beyond what engineering can deliver, and you've probably already figured out by now that in your new company that engineering is sick and tired of that. Socialize amongst your peers and amongst the people who hired you and the key stakeholders some reduced expectations. And work out a more achievable plan with everybody involved. And really, you need to answer the question of what really, truly, absolutely must be in the next release. And that might be something that's technical debt that has to get done, or something's going to break because of an update, or that could be we just signed a $10 million deal and they need this. So you'll figure out what absolutely, really, truly has to be there. Get a few quick wins. You and your team, and when I talk about my team, I especially really refer to the dev team, which includes the BAs, the developers, QA people. They're the ones who probably need the morale boosters. You need some morale boosters, even small ones. A small but cool feature was shipped, a major sales win, is automated testing finally running. Let people know that these things have been finished, that they're going out. And sometimes you can help figure that out. Figure out what's the low-hanging fruit. They may not be thinking of the developers may not be thinking of low-hanging fruit, and they only want the big deal features. But if you can come up with this low-hanging fruit to get a few quick wins in, few quick new features put in that people have been asking for, that's going to go a long way to boosting everyone's morale. And when you get those quick wins, celebrate it with the development team, with everybody on the team. Include your product marketing, your salespeople, and make sure you're using we instead of I. We, the team, got this done. Bring in some pizza or ice cream or whatever the case might be. Make it a real celebration for people. So those are the first steps of what you should do in your first 2 weeks and in your first month or two at a company. What I wanted to spend the next couple minutes on is getting started with your new boss. You obviously spoke about what your expectations are at the very beginning when you were being interviewed, but talk about them again. Talk about what's your frequency of your one-on-ones that you need to have. Define what your one-year success looks like. Because that's really important, is you need to keep your eye on the ball. If your boss says success is this launching by X date, that's your definition of success. Everything that you do has to be geared towards that definition of success. Figure out what kind of a boss you have. Is your boss a micromanager? Will they let you work autonomously? Are they an oversharer? How open do you feel you can share with them? Are they going to take credit for things that you did, and you need to share your wins directly with stakeholders, or can you just report to your boss and they'll make sure to give you the right credit? Create a 30, 60, 90-day plan for yourself, and then you have to decide if you want to share it with your boss. Sometimes you feel like you should, sometimes you feel like you shouldn't. You got to get to know your boss a little bit before you can decide if you want to do that. Your plan's first 30 days usually spells out how you will learn the company's systems, procedures, people, customers, clients, and culture. 60-day section will usually outline how you plan to continue to assess the company and begin to use your strengths. And the 90-day section will show how you're going to take what you've learned and begin putting it into action. How can you meet some of the goals you and your manager already agreed on? And a little bit of a conclusion. I love this quote. I saw it in Fortune magazine from Deep Nishar at LinkedIn, and it so sums up what a product manager is. A great product manager has the brain of an engineer, the heart of a designer, and the speech of a diplomat. People ask me, what's a product manager? And I always say that you have to be able to speak geek and speak business and be able to translate between the two. And that's really kind of summed up in this quote from Deep Nishar. In your first couple of weeks, you need to have laser focus in your new company. It's all about interactions with people and delivering value. What drives this list is the who, what, and why. And without that why, a product is doomed to fail. That's why it's important to know what is the problem the product is supposed to solve. As I said before, you need to know what the problem is that you're looking to solve so you can have that laser focus. Building new products and features is great, but unless you're Steve Jobs, you need to solve a problem for the marketplace. And this is especially true in B2B products and services, where I've spent basically my entire career. Companies won't spend money on a new product, and I mentioned this before, or a service, unless it solves a problem they have. B2C is somewhat different, where consumers will pay for something that is a want and not necessarily a need or a solution to a problem. Again, the Steve Jobs paradigm of building something and the masses will come, or do you have to build the reason why the masses are going to want to come to it?
Hey, Paul, so we just had a question come in from Anthony. Anthony,
Yes.
I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, so one of the goals I had when applying to the Product Mentor program was to develop the understanding to eventually become a director or VP of product and have the toolkit to jump into a company that's suffering from the absence of a strong product leadership or alignment under product. So this was a really relevant and fortuitous presentation. After sort of seeing all this, I think one of my questions is, as a junior product manager, how do you know when you're ready to take on this kind of responsibility of parachuting into a troubled company or product situation? And then as a follow-up to that, how do you convey it once you're ready? In other words, whether on a resume or recruiter or in an interview, how do you convey your readiness for this kind of leadership role?
Well, first thing I would say would be show it in your current role. Even if the company's running great, there's got to be something that can be better. Can you come up with better product management practices for your current company? Can you show that you increased throughput of your dev team or the entire product team by putting in best product management best practices? Really show it in what you're currently doing, and show, a lot of times, whether it's a career coach or a headhunter or a recruiter, they'll say the best thing, or anything you read online, they'll say, when it comes to writing your resume, make sure that you have in it not just facts, I did this, I did that. Show numbers. Show that you increased the team's velocity by X. You increased sales by X. You put out X 3 big new features which became market differentiators for the company. You really just got to show your chops that you've done it where you currently are. And you and I have been talking about how to get other people to maybe listen to you a little bit better. But I don't know. The way I kind of see it is you kind of just have to know it in yourself. Have I done this at my company? Can I go in and take over an existing product that's got some trouble and really set it straight? Do I know my product management best practices well enough, and be confident in them enough to really go in there into a new company and take over. My current boss is very affectionately calls me her bulldog. She knows that I'm not afraid to go in there and state my opinion and get something done. But she also knows that I can be a bulldog in a china shop and not break things, and she knows I'm not going to step on people's toes too much, at least. But again, take charge. Show people above you and below you and sideways from you that you can take charge. When I was an early meeting that I had at my current company was a meeting that I really had no business being on this call. It was only very tangentially related to what I was working on, and really I should not have taken over the call. But nobody was, even the person who convened the meeting was not really running it, and I just sort of took it over and was like, okay, we're here. What's the problem we're looking to solve? Tell me. And then everybody spoke about it, and then I was like, okay, what's the action items? Let's figure this out. What are the next steps that we have to do? And I got so many people who came over to me afterwards, and they're like, thank you for doing that. We don't have that many people in this company who can run a meeting like that and take the bull by the horns. So really just have a take charge attitude and have confidence in your ability to work on product management best practices in your own company. Then you'll know that you'll be ready to do it somewhere else.
Great. So I'm going to go to the general question that we received earlier at this point, and this is from Dulio Dennis, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And Dulio asks, what differentiates a product manager and a project manager?
The way that I usually define the difference between a product and project manager is the product manager is the person who figures out what has to get done, and the project manager is the person that makes sure it gets done.
Nice and succinct. I like that. Let me hand it back to you to wrap up. If anyone gets any questions in before I start the closing, feel free, and I'll pass them along to Paul. And it's theproductmentor.com/live. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you. Just last slide. Here's my contact info. And before you parachute into a company, have a plan to engage with people and issues. Remember that titles don't really matter that much, but driving collaboration and product success do matter. And as much as I've been talking about parachuting, I'm really not into parachuting. Bike riding is my thing. That's a picture of me at this year's 5-borough bike tour. So if there were an analogy of biking into something, I would have picked that, but it doesn't exist. Couldn't figure that out. Parachuting made a lot more sense. You can find me online. That's my LinkedIn URL. That's my Twitter handle, and my email address is on there. Feel free to get in touch with me after this presentation. And thank you, everyone, for listening today.
Awesome. I thought that was your parachute outfit. Thank you for clarifying. So we got just one last question in from someone named San, S-A-N. And their question is, what differentiates a product manager and a product strategist? Looks like we're doing a lot of comparison, general questions today.
It's a really good question. I would say that a product strategist is someone who's higher up than a product manager. I had my last company, Medidata. They had a very well-oiled, very well-run product management team while I was there, and there was a VP of product management who was my boss's boss, but there was also a VP of product strategy who worked directly with the VP of product management, basically together. But the strategist, their real goal was to figure out, okay, what's the strategy for moving all of the company's products together forward, as opposed to just how to better implement features or figure out what new features are needed in an individual product. So strategist really is thinking very, very big picture, whereas let's say maybe at the 50,000-foot view, whereas a product manager is more down at the 10 to maybe 25,000-foot view of strategy and tactical management of an individual product.
Awesome. Cool. So I just want to say thank you to Paul Hurwitz, Director of Active Analytics at Active Health Management, for today's discussion on parachuting into existing product. And as always, for those of you who are joining us, the presentation will also be posted to our SlideShare channel. And also a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and everyone else who joined us today in the room, as well as online through the productmentor.com/live. And also don't forget, if you're interested in being a mentor, very much like Paul and many, and who you now also see along the bottom of the screen, also like David, who's a group mentor this time around, definitely come join theproductmentor.com. And sign up. If you sign up as a mentor, I'll be in touch with you very quickly. Our next session is starting on November 1st and lasts for 6 months, and we cannot have enough mentors. You can be anywhere in the world. You just have to be a great leader, a great educator, a great teacher. And also, if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own free-for-all job board at theproductjobs.com. And again, everyone, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you guys out at the next Product Mentor Talk. Bye.